brought to you by a paid sponsorship for Tailspire. More than half a year into this venture, Dave and Wade's sat, doing a sort of grim accounting. A tally of advances squandered, of time and reputation lost, of the 7 times they should have turned back, of the 8th when they could have saved William. Now, Shiftywick was dead. The spear tip was not only in the wrong hands, but completed with its old haft, and the brewing storm overhead was only growing, fed by some blood ritual. They had soundly failed. Well, Waits couldn't make eye contact.
South.
Storm's still coming.
Can we outrun it?
Maybe if we had supplies. The horses, they'd need more food.
Feed them limes.
The little window into the carriage snaps shut. What about us? Poke looked back at Horseshoe Village. Whoever had the spear was getting stronger. The bizarre blizzard collapsed and plumed twice its size again. He saw in its shadow twinkling pinpricks of pink light. Wraiths. South. With their lime supply siphoned by the horses, only 3 days' worth of food, no firewood to keep them warm, and a month of travel between them and Injast. Wade's, Poke, Skittles, Quintus, Dave, and Jim began the long journey south down one of the most desolate roads in existence. A death sentence. But what other choice did they have? The storm was expanding in weird leaps and bounds, occasionally collapsing in and doubling in size. On that first day, the team decided to forego the firewood and any game they might find in the woods, and instead pushed ahead, trying to soundly outpace the storm. In the evening, they saw enough of the clear sky to feel safe resting overnight. Jim was worried about the horses, though. The road isn't treacherous. The horses are tired. The limes keep them happy enough, but Ellen and Betsy are slowing. We didn't pack enough firewood, and there's only so much frostbite that I can heal with them. Shh. To the north, they saw a kind of pink aurora. Occasionally, it would swoop into the mountains or forests, and they would hear the terrified bleats of an animal. That seems bad. Poke's unsuccessful hunt the following morning revealed something maybe more troubling. The woods along this stretch of road were abandoned. Fresh tracks from the previous night had retreated south, and in some cases stopped, turned back, and walked calmly north into the storm. The behavior of the storm had also changed. The center of the storm was no longer over Horseshoe Village, but instead was moving south down the cold road.
They're following us.
With the storm unpredictably expanding, and now literally following them south, they decided to force march through the night. They fed the horses limes and what potions they could to help with the frostbite, but it was clear the following day that the horses were slowing and they would need sleep that night. So while Jim tended to the horses and took them at half pace, the rest of the team scouted for food, warmth, and danger. Poke returned with a bag of charcoal. He explained that there were strange tunnels in a burned-down forest. Dave found a burned bear leg next to a smooth tunnel, and elated, brought it back to feast. Wade spent the day observing the storm. Within it, there appeared to be some sort of evil ecosystem forming. He saw lightning reaching up to the sky from its center, as well as shifting shapes on the ground, which he worked out to be some kind of herd, or army maybe. Countless wraiths would flock like birds. As he returned to camp, Wade started to hear snatches of fireside tales, the crackle of a fire, and smell warm meat on the spit. The butcher. Some say he's a ghost or some kind of demon, but nobody who ever saw him lived to tell the tale. Just a warm, inviting cabin in the middle of Butcher's Basin. Anyone who went up to it Ah, what the fuck? Wade, who had just arrived, heard the screams of his teammates, got to cover, and pulled out his bow, ready for action. But it had turned out that the bare leg that Dave had brought back had just kicked on the spit for some reason, which of course had scared the shit out of the crew, and they agreed not to eat it, even though it smelled really good.
No spine, no twitch.
And so they went to sleep, warm and hungry, but with a little bit of hope. Wade's had brought back one piece of good news. The storm, though still moving south, had stopped expanding. The next several days and nights were not very pleasant for the team. They realized that the tunnels they'd found were signs of a remoras that was up ahead. To avoid running into it, they did less hunting and gathering for several days. Finally, exhausted, freezing, and starving, they noticed a little cabin in Butcher's Basin, warm and inviting. The cost-benefit analysis of exploring a potential murderer's cabin looks different for everybody. To Dave, it was mostly upside. Exhaustion was slowing them down, and there was no way whatever was in that cabin was scarier than what was chasing them. So either they went in and got whatever supplies they could, a little bit of warmth, and got rid of this exhaustion, or they were in a worse way anyway. The only mistake the team made was going without Jim or the cart. Well, actually, no, they made two mistakes.
Cabin on lake.
3.
Oh,
Dave, grabbed by a giant tentacle, was screaming towards the mimic's mouth. Wade, Stabby, and Skittles all took aim and perforated the tentacle. This startled the enormous mimic long enough for Dave to tumble out of its grip. Across the lake, Jim sprung into action, but the mimic was charging in fast. It landed with a resonant crunch, a crack shot across the ice. Skittles and Poke on one side, Dave and Wade's on the other. Jim screeched south, choosing the dragon. It's barely hurt! Dave managed to just barely slide out of the way. Skittles, desperately trying to outpace the fissure and flank the mimic, got caught by the next swing. He fired off 2 crossbow bolts to no avail and was pulled all the way to the door. Undulating and concentric teeth closed in on Skittles. Poke took this opportunity to cheese it. Bite ran full clip and jumped across the widening chasm. Wade shot its blink arrow at the cart and hit, leaping out and grabbing to its side.
run!
Both the cart and the mimic were barreling towards Dave, the mimic clambering around the crack, struggling to shove Skittles into its mouth. Dave turned back to make a final stand. Weeds grabbed Dave by the back of his coat and dragged him across the ice, while Skittles screamed for mercy. The team cleared the lake and made it around a mountain, out of view. That night, they went to bed hungry, leaving Skittles uneulogized. And Dave thought that he was hallucinating when he saw glowing mushrooms begin to grow in a path to the east. Look!
Great. Fairies.
Brought to you by a paid advertisement for my favorite VTT, Tailspire. Now, finally, you can import your own 3D models as miniatures and get access to other people's 3D models that they make available. They don't handle systems, but I think they handle map building and play hands down better than anyone else I've tried. Links in the description. Big thanks to Peter O. Morgan for playing Wades and Shadows. Big thanks to you for listening. And I know this is nuts, but it seems like the fans that are passionate are very passionate, so if you want to see more of these, right-click Loop, or maybe consider the Patreon.